One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
And how were these, were other items thrown away at the same time that the pants and the shoes were thrown away?
Yes, we were just scrambling to get whatever was in the back of the car, whatever we can find that was obvious.
Did you look in the back of the car as well as your brother?
It was a hatchback. The hatchback was open.
I'm sorry, did I ask you if the hatchback was open?
I looked
Ask
in.
your next question.
Did you look in the car yourself, Mr. Menendez?
Yes.
Did you reach and obtain items in the back of the car yourself?
Yes.
Did you put them in something before you put them in the dumpster?
I know there was a tennis bag there, and we put some of the things in the tennis bag, some of the things we just threw in the dumpster.
And what did you do with the tennis bag after you put things in it?
We threw it in the dumpster.
Were there a number of tennis bags in the back of your car?
Yes.
Now, do you recall specifically where in the chain of events, the movie, Mulholland Drive, the Santa Monica Civic, where in the chain of events you threw away the clothing in the tennis bag?
No.
Do you know if it was before you got to the Santa Monica Civic or after you were at the Santa Monica Civic?
I'd always thought it was after, but it very well could have been before.
So you're not certain about that?
No.
And do you know what city or area, well, strike that, was the dumpster at a service station, gasoline station?
Sustained.
What kind of premises was the dumpster at?
It was at a gas station. It had a little, I think it had a little car wash there. It was a big place.
Was it a gas station?
Yes.
And do you know what city or town or area the gas station was in?
Santa Monica.
And do you recall, after being in Santa Monica, returning home?
Yes.
And do you recall the route for getting home?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, had you spent more time in Los Angeles since 1986, or had your brother spent more time in Los Angeles since 1986?
I had much more.
Which of you, if either, was more familiar with the roads, the freeways, the routes?
I was.
Which of you on Sunday night was driving?
Lyle was.
And which of you, if either, was giving directions?
I was.
Now, what kind of emotional condition were you in by the time you headed home?
I was crying. I know I was shaking. I was not in a good emotional condition.
And what about your brother? Was he in a good emotional condition?
No, he wasn't. He was making a lot of mistakes on the road. I was trying to tell him to get it together.
Okay. Did you feel at that time that you were capable of meeting with Harry Berman or any other friend?
Overall.
No, not at all.
Now, when you got back to the house, what did you do?
I went into the room where my parents were.
Would you back up a little? Why did you do that?
I don't know. I just couldn't stop myself. I was just drawn to the room. I didn't really want to go in, but I could not go in.
And when you did go in, how did it affect you, if at all?
It affected me. I just started crying a lot harder. At one point I started to scream. It was awful, and I couldn't handle what I was seeing.
Do you recall hearing the 9/11 tape that was played?
Yes.
Were you in the room with your brother when he was calling the police?
No.
Were you on the same floor of the house?
No.
Where were you when, to the best of your knowledge, your brother was calling the police?
I believe I was in the den. I mean, I don't know exactly at what point he was on the phone with the police. I assume when he went upstairs. But after he went upstairs, I went back to the den.
You had been in the den. Did he come and get you?
Yes.
Did he get you out of there?
Yeah.
And did he go upstairs?
Yes.
And you went back in?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
After he went back upstairs, after he went upstairs, what did you do?
I went back in the den.
And you don't know why?
No.
Were the lights still on?
Yes.
And when had the lights been put on?
When we were picking up the shells.
When you got back home, what was your state of mind with respect to whether or not your parents were dead?
I mean, logically, I knew they were dead, but I just couldn't accept that. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that they were dead. It just
I'm sorry.
It just seemed too much for me.
When you saw them in the den later, didn't they appear to be dead?
Yes.
And did you accept it then that they were dead?
Yeah.
Roll.
Yes, I accepted that they were dead and that they were gone, but I still couldn't believe that. It just seemed impossible to me.
What was impossible about it?
The fact that my mom and dad could be killed, it just seemed impossible.
Did you think they were immortal?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Why did you find it hard to believe that they could die?
Because they were my parents, and they had always been in my life, and I just never thought they could really die.
Just because you needed them, or because they were incapable of dying, or they were too strong to die, or what?
I don't really know. They were so powerful, and they were so overwhelming in my life that I never thought that they would go away. I never thought that they would not be in my life. And it was hitting me that they were not in my life, and it just seemed unreal.
Did they seem unreal when you went back into the den? Was there something about the way they appeared that didn't seem natural?
Yeah.
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
Mr. Menendez, you heard played in this courtroom tape of your interviews with Sergeant Edmonds and with Detective Zoller.
Yes.
Do you recall on one or both of those you're describing your parents looking like wax figures, not seeming real?
Yes.
Is that an impression you at what time did you form that impression?
Both a little when I was picking up the shells, although I was trying really not to look at them. I was really doing everything I could to stay away from them, but it was after when I was looking at them and I couldn't stop myself.
When you say after, do you mean when you returned to the house?
Yeah, when I returned to the house later that night.
What we're talking about now?
Yes.
Now, after your brother made the call, the police arrived, is that correct?
Yes.
And you eventually wound up at the station and you gave the statement to Sergeant Edmonds that we heard?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Menendez, over the course of that week, particularly as between Thursday and Sunday night, you have described the fact that you were in fear. Who were you in fear of?
My parents.
Both of them?
Yes.
And were you in fear of them independently or together as a unit, or both?
I'd say both. Definitely also independently.
Had your parents worked together as a unit in the past to frighten you?
Yes.
Was that something that happened more than once in your life?
Yes.
Can you recall the earliest time in your life when your parents worked together to frighten you?
The earliest time I can remember.
Yes, when is that earliest time?
When I was,
Where were
I guess
you living?
it was the North Mill Roadhouse, right after Muncie, before Pennington.
Okay, and that's the house in, I think it's called West Windsor, New Jersey, outside of Princeton?
Yes.
Was there some feature that house had that was different than some of the other houses you had lived in?
Yes.
What did that house have?
It had a basement. And not just had a basement, but it was a unrugged basement.
Unrugged?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
There wasn't any rug or carpet on the basement floor.
Okay, what was the basement floor made of?
It was cement.
Was this basement, you know what the difference is between a finished basement and an unfinished basement?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
Yeah, I guess.
Do you know the difference between a finished basement and an unfinished basement? You know what the difference is? That's the question.
No.
Okay. Did the basement of this house look like a room in a house, or did it look like...
It looked similar to the one in Princeton. It was dark. There were round poles, I believe. It was cement. The walls were sort of... It wasn't a room that you would be in. It was a room that you'd store boxes in and things like that.
It was like a storage area, not a living area.
Yes.
So it was an unfinished basement.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did something occur that you remember when you lived in that house having to do with the basement?
Yes.
Okay, would you tell us what happened?
I was downstairs in the basement with my mom, and I don't remember what she was doing. We were getting some things, and at one point she started to leave, and so I was following after her, and she started going up the steps, and so I started going up the steps with her, but she was further ahead from me. I was walked slow, and then as she got to the top of the stairs, she closed the door and she shut off the lights.
Now, was she inside the basement when she closed the door and shut off the lights?
No, she was outside.
And where was the switch for the lights, inside the basement or outside?
Outside.
Okay, so at that point, she's outside the basement. Where are you?
I'm inside the basement at the top of the stairs.
Now, Mr. Menendez, do you know how old you were when you lived at that house on Mill Road in West Windsor?
I guess I was 7. That's the years that I lived there.
You lived there 1 year.
Yes.
Okay, so what happened after your mother went out and closed the door and turned off the light?
I started hearing a noise.
Before you heard the noise, did you do anything?
Oh, I was pounding on the door, begging my mom to open up the door
Why?
because it was dark. It was pitch black, and I was very scared.
Were you afraid of the dark when you were little?
Yeah, I was terrified of the dark.
Did your mother know that? Had she been told?
Well, she was told by me.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
Okay, so after you're pounding on the door, you hear a noise?
Yes.
And where's the noise coming from?
Inside the basement.
Are you at the top of the stairs at this point?
I'm at the top of the stairs, and the noise is coming from the inside the basement in the back.
Below you?
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of noise is it?
It was like a ghost noise.
What's a ghost noise?
Like a ooh, ah, that kind of
Okay.
thing.
Right.
Hmm.
And how did that make you feel?
Terrified me. I didn't know what it was, and I was really scared of it, and I started banging on the door.
Did you say anything while you were banging on the door?
Yes, I was begging for my mom to open up the door because there was something in the basement.
When you say you were begging your mom, do you know what kind
I was saying, please open up the door, please open up the door.
Were you calling out her name or mom or?
I don't remember.
Okay, so then what happens?
And the noise started getting closer, and I heard a box move, I heard something move in the basement, and it was getting closer, and I remember the feeling of the chills all over my body as it was getting closer, and I would hear it get closer, and I was pounding on the door and pounding on the door, and it just got closer until it was at the bottom of the stairs.
And eventually what happened?
I heard the footsteps coming up
Okay.
the stairs.
Came
And-
up the stairs?
Yes, and then it just jumped at me with a big hi-yah.
And what was it?
It was my dad.
It was your father.
Yeah.
And when he jumped at you, what did you do?
I screamed. I panicked.
You screamed.
I panicked, and I just held my hands up in the air.
And what happened after that?
He started laughing.
He started laughing?
Yes.
And what happened with respect to the door and the light?
My mom opened up the door and turned on the light.
And what was she doing?
She was laughing.
And then I take it, did you start laughing too?
No, I was crying, and I just wanted to get out of the basement.
Now, do you recall when you were living in the Pennington house, another incident when your parents frightened you together?
Yes.
When you were living in the Pennington house, Mr. Menendez, I think you previously testified you would have nightmares.
Yes, I had a lot of nightmares.
How would these nightmares come and go?
They would come for months at a time. For 2 months, 3 months, I would go to bed every night knowing I was going to have this same nightmare. And I would say to my mom, I can't go to sleep tonight. I'm gonna have the dream. And she was saying, no, you got to go to sleep. You got to go to sleep. It'll be fine. And I was saying, I can't get to bed.
Now, would there be a time, if you had the nightmare for 2 or 3 months every day, would there be a time when you wouldn't have the nightmares at all for a while?
Yes.
Now, was there some ritual that you worked out for the 2 or 3 month time when you were having the nightmares, something that had to be done every night before you could get into bed and try to go to sleep?
Objection, leading, and suggested.
Excuse me?
Sustained. The next question.
Was there something you would do during these 2 or 3 month periods before you'd go to bed at night?
Yes.
What would you do?
I would check every drawer, every closet underneath the bed.
Check for what?
Check for the monsters in my dream. Make sure there was nothing in there. There was no one hiding.
And did your mother get involved in this?
Sometimes.
And how did she know about this?
Well, because sometimes I'd be too scared to check it on my own, and I would want her there.
Had you told her about the nightmares?
Yes.
Had you told her about the checking?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall on an occasion when you wanted to do the checking that your mother was with you?
Yes.
Okay. Would you tell us about that occasion?
She was sitting on the bed, and I was going around to check the doors. I wanted her to do it, but she was saying, no, you do it. You got to be brave. You have to get old and be able to do these things yourself. And so I was checking the drawers, and I went to the closet, and I opened up the closet, the right closet, and this thing came down at me, and I jumped back.
What was the thing that came down on you?
It was a mask of a witch, this green mask.
And was that something you knew you had in the house?
No.
You had never seen it before?
No.
And what happened after the mask fell down from the closet on you?
My dad came out of the doorway and started laughing.
The doorway to your room?
Yes, he was apparently around the corner.
Hiding?
Yes.
And what did you do after your dad started laughing?
I just looked at my mom and I was crying. I just ran out of the room.
Where'd you run to?
Downstairs into the room next to the door.
Did that room next to the door have a particular name?
It was called the green room.
And eventually, did you see your mother in the green room?
Yes.
And did she say anything to you while you were in there?
Yes.
What were you doing in the green room after you'd run out of your bedroom?
I was crying in the corner.
And what did your mother say to you when you saw her in the green room?
She said that she was sorry, but I had to be brave and had to get rid of these dreams and confront these dreams and to be strong, that I can't cry my way through this.
Had you ever told your mother that one of the recurring figures from your dreams was a green face?
Oh yes, she knew about my dreams.
Now, did these episodes when your parents frightened you together make you a less fearful child?
No, not at all.
Did they make you brave?
No.
Was there something else your father would do on a regular basis with respect to the family car that frightened you?
Yes.
And what would your father do in the car that would frighten you?
He would put his knees on the steering wheel and steer the car toward the side of the road, usually a big ditch or a big fall-off drop, and tell me he wasn't going to turn the wheel.
And what would happen?
And the car would be going right toward the side of the road off the cliff or the ditch.
And would your mother be in the car when he was doing this?
Sometimes.
And how would you react to him doing that?
I would be screaming and saying, turn the car, and he'd be playing with his knees and not turning the car basically he was waiting for me to turn the car at one point
Wait, he was waiting for you to, how were you going to do that?
to grab the steering wheel.
Okay. Well, were you
and-
sitting in front?
Sometimes I was sitting in front, sometimes I was sitting in the back seat, and I'd jump over and I would grab the steering wheel. I knew eventually that all I had to do was grab the steering wheel and he would turn the car, that he was just waiting to see how long I would go before we went into the ditch.
So why didn't you do it right away? Why didn't you grab the steering wheel right away?
Because I wanted my dad to be proud of me, and I wanted to make him seem like I was brave and that I could do this, and I didn't have to turn the steering wheel, and that I wasn't afraid.
But you always did, didn't you?
Oh yes, I eventually always did.
Well, if you hadn't turned the steering wheel, do you think your father would have driven the car into the ditch, or do you think he would have stopped it?
Oh, he would have stopped. I mean, I didn't think so at the time, but I know now he would have stopped.
So what made you scream and grab the steering wheel?
Because he would get too close to the ditch, and I would think that he was really going to go into the ditch. And so I would scream, either jump over the seat or just grab the steering wheel and try to turn it.
Now, did your mother ever stop this when she was in the car?
No.
And how did it make you feel, this experience? Was this pleasant?
No, it scared me.
And did your father do this more than once?
Yes, he did it many times.
And did it scare you less each time?
It didn't scare me as much as the first time or the second time, but as we started getting close to the ditch, it got really scary because I thought he was really going to go into the ditch when I was there.
So did
This
it,
is vague as the timeline.
what period of years did your father do this, driving with his knees towards the ditch trick?
When I was 7, 8, 9, 10.
So it went on for quite a while.
Yeah, whenever he felt like it.
And every time it happened, was it the same kind of experience for you?
Yes.
Do you remember hearing Mrs. Goldsmith in this trial testify about a time that your father left you in a cemetery
Yes.
to toughen you up or make you brave?
Yes.
Do you remember the time you were in the cemetery?
No.
Were there other things that you remember your parents doing to try to toughen you up or make you brave?
Yeah, they would do all kinds of things.
Let's talk about your mother for a minute. How would your mother react or treat you if you were injured or ill?
She would just treat me, and
I don't understand what that means.
she would just clean up the wound.
And?
And that's it.
Would she ever say anything? I'm sorry, you feel bad. How does it feel, honey? Does this hurt?
No.
Did she ever call you honey, by the way?
No.
Did she ever call you by any pet name of any kind?
No.
What did she call you?
She called me Erik.
And did she call you other names, negative names?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, do you have a scar on your left elbow?
Yes.
And do you know how you got that scar?
When I fell off a bike.
And how old were you when that happened?
5 years old, I guess.
5?
Maybe 6. I was in Muncie.
And was this a new bike, an old bike, what?
It was a brand new bike.
Excuse me?
It was a brand new bike.
Did you hear your cousin Alan testify to watching your father doing something with you on a bike?
Yes.
Did that sound familiar?
Yes.
Do you remember those bike riding training sessions with your father?
Yes.
Did those kinds of things, this thing that your cousin Alan described with you being pushed down the hill into the cul-de-sac,
Yes.
did that happen more than once?
Yes.
And do you remember the specific occasion on which you got the scar on your left elbow?
Yes.
And would you tell us what happened? Actually, Your Honor, it's afternoon.
All right, we'll recess until 1:30, ladies and gentlemen. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final...